So it's getting to almost 3 weeks since we moved into our new home, and I wanted to talk about my experiences with thermal leaks and how you can identify them in your new home. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Adrian, and together with my wife Anita, we've bought our first home. It's a 2-bedroom, semi-detached property in West London, a 1930s build, and we got keys on 19th of November. So I didn't expect to be making a video about such a riveting topic. But here we are. Since moving in, myself and my wife use the second bedroom as base camp, right? That room is in a decent state. We're not going to renovate and redecorate that room this year. We'll tackle that next year. So as we're redoing the whole house, we're using the second bedroom as the place to chill out in. So we had a night where I think we were staying over. It was about 0 degrees, maybe -1, maybe -2 degrees. Put the heating on a little bit, turned it off before we went to sleep. We had a winter duvet, a good throw, and from the neck down, pretty warm. My head was warm, had a nice sleep. Then I woke up frantically at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, why is it so cold? Right, the heating's completely off, but from the neck down, nice and warm, my head was ice. The pillow next to me, ice cold. So at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm frantically searching around, trying to figure out where this cold air is coming from. I'm like checking the windows. I can feel there's a bit of cold air from there, but the wall behind me, so where I'm resting my head, that wall behind me, I touched that wall. I was like, why is it so cold? It is a freezing cold wall. So with the experience of that second bedroom, I thought, do you know what? I should probably check the rest of the house, whether it's just checking, putting my hand against the window frames or touching the walls. There's definitely some cold spots in the house, and some rooms are colder than the other rooms, and when we turn the heating on and then turn it off, it either takes longer for a certain room to warm up or that room gets colder quicker. It's clear that there are problems with regards to heat retention, heat loss, thermal leaks at the property, and that's probably down to just poor insulation, outdated insulation, inefficient insulation. Now, the property itself is 87 years old. It's built in the 1930s. The surveyor did tell us that actually the roof insulation is incomplete, it's out of date, and that needs to be redone. So we're probably losing a lot of heat upwards. We probably have a lot of cold air coming downwards into the property. The surveyor also mentioned about the rendering on the outside of the property. He didn't talk about it in terms of insulation and heat loss, etc. He actually just mentioned that the rendering at the bottom of the property is coming away from the walls. And so the issue there is, if it comes away, yes, you potentially got some cold air coming in, but also because it's coming away and not fully fallen off, water will go in, and then you have the problem of damp, right? Water goes in, gets in between the render and the bricks, and then you've got damp potentially building up. The surveyor didn't really comment too much about the insulation and the heat loss, heat retention issues of the property. Obviously, they'll mention the EPC, and the EPC of this property is a D, which is not great, not terrible. It's like smack bang in the middle. But you know, as a first-time buyer, what do I know about the EPC? What do I know? I'm not going to ask about thermal leaks and heat loss and heat retention. For you guys watching this video now, you know to think about these things and ask questions and queries about that. It's not a legal requirement, though, for anyone to tell you the truth about it, but it doesn't mean that you can't ask questions about it. So, like anyone out there, I turned to trustworthy Google to do some research, and actually, it's quite common for 1930s style properties in the UK to be poorly insulated. So properties built before the 1930s, so famously in the 1920s and much older, from my understanding, don't really have cavity walls. And some of the 1930s properties, the really early 30s properties, even though in the 1930s they shifted to cavity walls, the earlier ones don't necessarily have cavity walls and still carried over the building traditions of the 1920s. Also, our property is pebble dash, which you might have seen in the house tour. And apparently pebble dashing was quite common to cover up rubbish brickwork. So it's possible that the brickwork wasn't very good and they pebble dashed it as well on top. Additionally, with the property being a semi-detached property, and this is something that we don't always think about, my previous home when I was living with my parents was a terrace. So you've got the house here, house here, house here. So the only places where you're getting cold air potentially is the front and back of the property. With a semi-detached, we've got the front, the side, which happens to be where that second bedroom aligns with, and then you've got the back of the property. So if you've got poor insulation and then you don't have adjoining houses, adjoining walls, you're more exposed. The building is more exposed to the elements. So now I'm fully armed with a lot more knowledge on thermal leaks, heat loss, heat retention, and potentially why this is happening for the property that I've purchased. It is what it is. However, I still wanted to get a bit more scientific with identifying thermal leaks. I didn't want to just presume I've got thermal leaks. I mean, it's a good assumption. So I did some more Googling, and there are companies that you can hire to do surveys, be it thermal imaging, ultrasonic testing, but they're expensive. I thought there's got to be a way I can do this myself. Again, some more Googling, and I found some cameras, thermal imaging cameras. I think you can even get attachments for an iPhone or an iPhone app that uses some of the technology in the device itself. However, I found a really cheap Black & Decker thermal leak detector for about £55. This basically allows you to take a reference temperature and then allows you to take temperatures of various things in the room, and it will change color. So you will have a green color, you'll have a blue color, and you'll have a red color. Green is your reference, blue is cold spots or a negatively impacted difference in temperature. Red is a positively impacted temperature. And then there's a little switch that allows you to change it so that you can have tolerance or a discrepancy. I think tolerance is probably the better word, of 0.5, 3, and 5 degrees. So it can go blue based on 0.3, 3 degrees, or a 5 degree difference. That's made a huge difference in getting a bit more scientific with identifying thermal leaks. So I've described how that works. Let me actually go around the house and do some testing and show you some examples of thermal leaks around the property. So I'm in the second bedroom. This is where we've been staying over the last couple of weeks as we're renovating the rest of the house. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video, which is a tour of the whole property, please go have a look at that so you have a basic understanding of the structure and the layout of the property. It's a semi-detached property, and this wall is not adjoining another property. So I would expect this wall to be quite cold. Then you've got this mirrored unit. The other side of this is the staircase. And then obviously you've got the door and some shelving units here. So that's a very quick tour of the room. We've got an air mattress here. Now we're sleeping over there, where I lived previously. Didn't need to put the heating on overnight, right? I can get away with it. So I woke up and I was like, what the hell is going on? It's so cold. My head is so cold. So where's this cold air coming from? And it wasn't very obvious. But one of the things I noticed, I'm going to flip the camera around, was this wall was very cold. So when I touched it, to the touch, it was freezing cold. But then one of the things I noticed is as I was touching it, I was like, why is it bouncy? But also, can you see the indentations on my fingers? Right? So I was like this, and so what's going on? And it's spongy. I was very confused, naturally. And having done some research online, it looks like the previous owner had used insulated wallpaper. I didn't even know this was a thing. But essentially, they probably had the same issue and thought this wall is really cold. And so what they did is they put this insulated wallpaper, which is a roll of polystyrene, which if you search on Google, you can find it. And in the UK, you can find it on Screwfix. I think it comes with wallpaper, or you can then put your own wallpaper on top and then you can paint afterwards. Clearly, it's not doing a good job. I've decided to purchase one of these. Now, I've mentioned this earlier. This is a thermal leak detector. And all I want to do now is just give you guys some readings. So we're going to take a reference temperature. Let's do that on this wall where we know it's facing inside the property. Okay, so that's showing 19.6. Okay, so 19.6 is that wall. So, that wall is fine. So I'm using that as the reference. So already we're at 16.7. If we go down the wall, 16.1. Are we going to get a 15? Nope, it's jumping up again. So 16, 16.6. 17.2. Okay, but where I'm sleeping is further down here. 16.1, 16.1 again. Let's move across over here. 16.4. And by the way, I've got the meter set up so there is a 3 degree discrepancy. How about the wall where the window is? 15.9. 16.1. Let's move further up. Okay. 18. Probably because we're getting closer to the boiler, I would imagine, just a guess. But yeah, you can see there's definitely some cold spots. I mean, if I go in the radiator, it's going to go red. And if I go in the window, probably not going to show, but I did this the other day and there was some blue around the window. So that means there's thermal leaks around the window too. But you can see this wall is cold. So yeah, so that's the second bedroom. Let's move on. Let's look through some other scenarios. So I'm in the downstairs corridor, the lobby area. So you've got the living room over here, kitchen over here, and you've got the front door here. There's a bit of a thermal leak in this corridor, right? So in the last 3 days, we had a locksmith around. So they've replaced the locks. But one of the things that the locksmith had to do was take out the old insulation between the frame and the door because couldn't quite put the locks in. The new lock was a bit thicker. The back plate that the lock actually goes into in the frame is thicker, and the wood frame is so thin you can't chip away at it because you're going to cause issues to the structural integrity of the wood frame. So take the insulation off, right? But in the 3 days of doing that, and we've had like -2 degrees, it is freezing cold, right? So let me show you some readings with the thermal leak detectors. Let's use our reference point. I mean, this is a timber door, not a UVPC door. So this is the basic door. The insulation was taken off more around all the way up here and then a little bit up there. So let's use this part here between the frame and the door as our reference temperature. So I'm going to try to get this right. Okay, I think that's okay. So that is 15.4. So let's move it across. 14.1. And it's a 3 degrees discrepancy on the thermal leak detector. 12.3, there's our first bit of blue. 12.2. 13.6, 13.14. Okay. Ooh, 12.3, 12.2, dropping like crazy. 11.9, 11.8, 11.3, 11, 10.4, 10.3, 10.1, 10. Crazy. So you can see there's a lot of air, and I did this the other day and I was getting a 9. So the gap is bigger at the bottom. You can't see it, but you should be able to see a bit of light shining through, more so at the bottom than further up. Small things like that, right? Just removing the insulation from the door is bringing a lot of cold air into this. And then because this is a small lobby area, that cold air is going into the kitchen and it's going into the living room. So yeah, look, that's just another example of a thermal leak. Now, one more that I want to show you through, which is the living room. There's a bit of damp on these walls. It's feeling a little cold in here regardless. I thought, let's do some testing in here. So just to remind everyone, that wall and that wall is facing directly outside. There's no adjoining property. But this wall with the chimney, this is adjoining the next door neighbor. So let's do a reference point on this wall. Okay, so 15.8 we have there. So let's move on the chimney, 15.1, 15.2. Oh, got a cold spot there. So we've got 12.8 over here, 12.7, 12.6, 12.5, 12.3. Okay, so we've got the radiator that was on previously. Yeah, it's going to be warm. Let's go on the wall on the side of the window. Cold spot already. 12.3, 12.4, 11.7, 11.5. Now the skirting board has been removed, so I'd imagine from the holes in the skirting board and from leaking through the floor, there's going to be a bit of air leaking in. But I'm more interested in the wall, right? Not too bad over here. 14.1, 13.4. 13.0, 12.9, 12.7, 12.2. Actually, let's try around the windows. Now, this panel here is loose, so there's going to be cold air coming through here potentially. Yeah, so 11.2, 11.9. And this is checking on the frame of the window to the wall. Let's check on the actual window itself. Yeah, I mean, that's not great either. Right, so there's air leaking from the window itself, and then there's air leaking from the frame to the wall, potentially. Let's try the rest of this wall. Yeah, I mean 12.4, 12.3, 12.2, 12.1, 13, 12.9, 12.6. So yeah, absolutely. There's a cold spot in here as well. So I hope you found those test cases, those real life examples useful. If you think the thermal leak detector is something of interest to you, I've actually got an affiliate link in the video description. It really helps me out, helps out the channel, pays for some of the bloody repairs that I'm going to have to do to this property. So check the video description. You can buy one of these really affordable, really efficient thermal leak detectors. It's really made a difference for me. I'm going to keep using this in the future. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. In terms of next steps, I need to go away, find some cheap and efficient ways to stop some of the thermal leaks around the doors and the windows, the chimneys, do some research into slightly more complicated issues. So the cold spots, the fact that we have some semi-detached walls with poor insulation. What can we do internally? What can we do externally? I've got a few calls to make with some builders and some plasterers. I'll make another video in the next couple of weeks to give you an update on potential solutions and what we're thinking of moving forward with now and potentially in the future. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it, found it useful, found it helpful, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really makes a difference and helps the channel out. Please share this with any first-time buyers so that they are in the know of some of these potential issues before they buy a house. I hope they don't watch this after they buy the house. I mean, they can watch it afterwards, but beforehand would be useful. But also send it to anyone you know who works in the field, in the industry. Really keen to speak to anyone, whether you're a company who specializes in producing thermal plastering or producing such solutions, or if you're a builder who's tackled some of these problems, really keen to speak with you. Potentially, let's do a video together. And the final thing is, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are keen to follow our progress and see how we tackle some of these issues. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, couple of months, I would say. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.